Looks like everyone's in, David. Is David? Yep, they're all in.
Yes.
Everyone's in. Thanks. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Global Encounters First Nations Peoples 2025 seminar program. It's wonderful to see you all again, and I hope you enjoy what we have on offer this year. I'm speaking to you today from Naarm, or Melbourne, and I acknowledge the traditional owners and particularly traditional owners around the country who have been incredibly supportive on the work we've been doing. So I express my gratitude as well as my acknowledgement. I'm really delighted to be kicking off this festival last October. So Will and I are going to talk a little bit about his film. I'm really hoping everyone's had a bit of had the opportunity to watch it. We did send round the Vimeo. I'm getting a thing saying that I have an unstable internet, which doesn't really happen to me very often. So I hope everything's going okay. Will's going to show a couple.
You did freeze for a second there,
I
Lynette.
did I? Oh, thank you.
Yeah. It might help. Like if you turn your video off, it might.
I'll turn my video off as soon as, yeah, if it does it again. Thank you. So, I'm going to start by introducing Will McCallum. Will is a PhD student at Deakin University. He's done this wonderful documentary film, which is just terrific, and it's part of his PhD research, and he's currently writing up the exegesis. But I'm going to ask Will to start by introducing himself a little bit and telling us what motivated him and attracted him to this particular topic.
Yeah, thanks, Lynette. Yeah, this has been a long sort of journey in the production of Waŋgany Mala, and it started way before it was ever a PhD project. It was really a kind of romantic idea, I guess. My background has been in documentary and producing sort of short factual documentary for universities, for NGOs, and I was based in China and also eventually Hong Kong. And I came into the Makassan story kind of as I was pitching a much larger project, and I just thought that the idea that First Nations were effectively through the trade of tripang were connecting with Ming Dynasty, Qing Dynasty China before the British had arrived in Australia. I just thought that was a wild reality that I certainly hadn't been taught about in school. And yeah, we as all these things are, it's not super easy just to get funding. You can't just go, oh, sweet, I'm going to make this film, and then you start doing it. It was very much a process of how much money do we have to start just even doing some exploratory work. And I just had this great pleasure to get on a plane one day and get out to Makassar and to some other parts of South Sulawesi. And I just was opened up to this very, very foreign space. I don't have a great background in Indonesia, but the idea that connected to Australia and to First Nations was just so exciting for me that we kind of built and yeah, in the past about 3 years ago, it became a PhD project as well, which has been fantastic because I also don't have a lot of experience working with First Nations communities, and my supervisors Martin Potter and Simon Wilmot have a real depth of experience in that space. So it's been fantastic. And again, I hope that as many of you as possible have been able to see the film through that link. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Will. Well, shall we kick off with one of our snippets, which I believe David's going to drive for us. So we've got 3.5 minute snippets that we're going to do across the 45 minutes of the seminar. And the first one should be coming up now. It's always a bit bit of a challenge with the technology.
Yeah, David's doing an amazing job because I think he's admitting
Here
to
we go. Thank you, David.
Unrakakan ma urmakasin urmakasin na yan ng balian urakan na. Ngayon nga ng balan na karang ka. An ulka akan alaw tawara ma irap magmakam nang ilang urar ma. Nungulya ka na nganyang majmang ma. Arak pakia urakan na urmakasin. Nalakena ma angal papala lang angaya. Armajur korko makarta. Armajur korko makan makarta biya. Nuwa brangkan mo angaya. Wan karang biya, wan kumiyat, wan kabrang kiyat yung mula. Ako nganyang anen ka bicara kaya puro alakan macam kayo ya.
Orang-orang Makassar biasanya dalam perahunya kan pasti membawa beras, membawa asam, membawa kunyit, membawa alat-alat.
Our people were tall and strong and healthy, because of food they eat from the bush. And the Makassan, they were short one. Atin po netang majura kanala ko namda kakpatang murmang katira lang ngakulang wan mamaya. Aken abra jura ko Makassan na nalikene mo ako na ya mama nara ko ma amda kachika nara ko mga ripon mamalwa la ubura like pangkilya pachikala yalinga tambokwa annga rajimri pirita maria nara ko makan annga ora ko no nara pe imdang mo wan mamalyo ngakulang urar maka pabraja kana narmangama.
Nah, mereka saling bertukaran. Di lain sisi orang-orang Makassar juga membutuhkan hasil tangkapan tradisional mereka. Mereka menangkap kura-kura, menangkap teripang yang dibutuhkan khususnya untuk orang-orang Cina.
Ya pablo yung wari pinama nan mama nan repa mama tialiwa akwa dan atirang matan po ya kam nan ngang kota kama mata turungan mamda kecika ngar mo kwa nan ora krek pa an rar ma chwa mama macha di perengkatan nama we never eat tripang, we don't know how to eat tripang.
Jadi mereka sebagai pengumpul, mereka kumpulkan dari saudara-saudara kita di Australia. Bahkan sebelum bahasa Eropa datang, mereka sudah menguasai Australia Utara.
Makassan was good to them. They were friendly to them. They talked friendly with them. It was a good time because the Aboriginal people, they wasn't angry with Makassan enough because they came to our shore. And Makassan was happy.
Thanks for that. That's a wonderful clip. As I said before, I hope everyone has had the opportunity to see the film. One of the things that really pops out with that one is, of course, the oral history and the importance of oral testimony and memory. And that's one of the things that comes through very strongly in your film, shifting us away from just a reliance on archival records, be they, historical or archaeological, any of the others, but to hear the voices of both people from Makassar and Anindilyakwa elders is just fantastic. How did you go about, I've got a couple of questions here. One is to ask about how you went about making those connections. And the next one, an important one, is to get you to tell us a little bit about that archival footage, particularly the amazing footage of the kids having made what looks like a beautiful little toy prow. But let's start with the accessing of people in Makassar and Anindilyakwa.
Yeah. So on the project really started from the Indonesian side and just basically turning up in Tanah Baru and Barra Beach. I had some amazing assistance from the Australian consulate in Makassar, which is one of the more recent consulates that Australia has established. And they pointed me in the direction of some people. We just sort of spent a lot of time talking to people about the project, understanding whether they were interested in it. There's a lot of pride over in Tanaburu about those links to Australia. So people are, really interested in foreigners being there. There's a lot of foreigners who are there who are come with their checkbooks and like commission the construction of a boat, and that all sort of starts. But yeah, the Indonesian side was quite easy to start the project. On the Australian side, I kind of came into this and thought, wow, here's this Makassan story. I spoke to the Molka project up in Yokala. I spoke to a few other people and said, hey, I want to make this film about the Makassans, and like, are there any, filmmakers or other people who'd be interested in collaborating? And they were kind of like, no, like, what's your angle on this? What are you going to bring to this? What are we going to actually, we know these stories. We don't need an outsider to come in and tell this story. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the process was figuring out what really we could bring with this larger project into the community's knowledge. And a lot of that became about showing those perspectives from Indonesia, because the knowledge is so well transferred in Northern Australia. But there aren't so many opportunities that I saw for those communities to get to Indonesia. And so we were sort of shooting and making a lot of material available to archives that were there. But eventually there was a person in a slide back there, Ariane Pearson, just became a massive part of this. He's a music coordinator in Yokala. He basically found he sort of saw a creative angle on this that I also shared with him, and we just kind of had a great time making this thing together. So he's a producer on this. And then it was also just the woman that we saw in the clip there, Edith Mamarika, who's passed away now. And unfortunately, we do have permission to be able to show her and her thoughts. But the women in the Ambakamba Grid Island Language Centre were just really enthusiastic as well about having their knowledge amplified, because I think it's probably less well known that the Makassan connection to Grid Island, whereas the Yolŋgu crew seem to have a really great way of amplifying their knowledge. So yeah, that's that answer. Sorry, Lynette, I'm going on a bit.
No, you're not going on. That's fantastic. And I think that's a really powerful thing that comes through in your documentary, is that it does extend beyond Yolŋgu. And as we know, from the work that we've been doing as well, certainly Tiwi, Yolŋgu, Anindilyakwa, and of course even Yanyuwa. So we've got one of our colleagues is starting a 3-year project with Yanyuwa, looking at the Yanyuwa connections to the Makassans as well, which is, pretty much a kind of not much researched yet.
Mm.
So look, one of the things that you mentioned when we had a chat the other day was how you were really trying to respect the oral histories and to move away from the kind of dominant narrative, which you've just been mentioning there, but also to avoid declarative statements of truth. And you made a couple of comments about cinema veritas, and how, in a sense, you didn't really want this to be a sort of a truth-telling through cinema, as it were. It's got a broader, more exciting, interesting narrative than that.
Yeah, that's it. Like, there was so many people that we interviewed through this process, and so many historians, anthropologists, museum curators, and they were so great at times of explaining things to us. But the kind of project came out of showing footage to people, and sort of seeing what, for instance, Edith here, seeing what she was interested in and making it about that curiosity, rather than having a third person kind of say, here's the truth, this is what we know about this thing. And I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people on this this call are familiar with Campbell McKnight, who's just such a kind of, he's got such a presence in this space, because if he's
in our audience tonight. I just spotted
there you
him.
go. And we really could have, I mean, I would have loved to interview Campbell for this film, but we sort of progressively moved in the direction of just showing the kind of contemporary reality and letting people who sort of live this speak for themselves, and also move away from, in early edits of the film, there were sections where it said, it's believed that Makassans, came to Australia from the 1600, whatever date we came up with. And eventually we just realized, like, that's just kind of not really respecting what Edith is saying. And it doesn't really matter the exact date. It's kind of about the pride and the sort of enthusiasm that she gets from talking about that. And I guess the other part of it, and you're so involved in this, Lynette, is that the space is moving so much, and we're questioning constantly how old this is, and what do we mean when we say Makassans versus, Indonesian visitors. And I guess the bigger point here is that there's been across the ocean, there's been this communication and this sort of shared family for, what are we talking, like thousands and thousands of years, it's never been a border, which is kind of the big idea of the film, really, is trying to blur and confront that sovereign border that has been enforced in Australia. Yeah.
Before we get on to the archival film sources, that sovereign border stuff is really important. And some of the work that some of our colleagues in Indonesia, I'm thinking of Daddy Aduri and others, who have been looking at the constant flow of Indonesian fisher people coming into Northern Australia. And of course, we actually have a treaty that allows some of that. But we also know that, we not infrequently, particularly on the Western Australian, northwestern Australian coast, encounter, at least the remnants of what's obviously been Indonesian fishermen camping noodle packets and, Indonesian sweet packets on the beach. So these are really, it's still very present, and it's contemporary. It's not just in and of the past, obviously.
Yeah.
So tell me about that archival footage of the kids playing and the kind of what looks like a type of reenactment.
Yeah, that is footage from Yirrkala, from the 1950s, I believe. I went through the National Film and Sound Archive, spent a lot of time collecting all sorts of stuff. I was quite focused on finding depictions of kind of Captain Cook and his arrival, and Arthur Phillip, and I was sort of in that space. But then I was also, there are some amazing pieces of film from Northern Australia. I think that piece of footage is called Aborigines of the North Sea Coast, or I can't remember exactly. But yeah, the team at the NFSA were just incredible, and it was for anyone who's out there in the sort of educational space who's producing a film, I just really encourage them to look at the Take 3 initiative, because you get 3 minutes of footage from the NFSA if you're working on something that's connected to education, without paying the royalties. And you pay for the processing fees, but if anyone who's in the film industry knows, if you actually pay for the royalties of these things properly, you just couldn't do it unless you were a big funded documentary. Yeah.
Fantastic. Shall we look at the next
Sure.
footage?
Yeah.
Do you want to set the scene for this one while David finds it?
Yeah, I guess there's a bit of a kind of combination of styles in this film. This is kind of, you call this a bit more in the observational vein, and maybe some people can get into the obvious metaphors of this thing, but we're just trying to show the chaos of building a ship, basically. That's probably the scene setting.
Great, thanks.
Kau ulangin tua, aku gak non tahan tali. Gue sekun di sebelah ini. Hei, gue mekol lagu nih ya. Satu, dua, tiga. Satu, dua. Tinggal ho. Tunggu. Komando. Sige di mana pada gede para. Mente mau nek main mi. Satu, dua. Bagi. Labu sih mai. Ya. Lagi.
It's a heavy thing to lift it up.
Yeah.
Or dance it. Because they're thinking about their own dance.
Jaga tuh liar ibu kalau jaga. Bagi saya. Ya, Itra tahan. Lagi. Itra tahan. Itra tahan. Lagi Ricky. Pukul arahnya nak kabut murah cepat nah. Ada di datanyo. Cepat. Sawi.
Probably more extended than we really need.
No worries, we can stop there.
No, that's it, I think.
Okay. That it does seem rather chaotic. And the scale of the ships are so astonishing. I mean, the team, we went down to the boat building yards back in September, and I don't think anything prepared me. I mean, these are not prows they're building the pinisi boats, but I don't think anything prepared me for the size or just the sheer complexity of creating this thing that doesn't have a blueprint. It doesn't, as a shipbuilding that we would perhaps be more familiar with, starts with ribs and planks, but in fact, in this case, starts entirely with a spine and then kind of works out from there. It's quite remarkable to see.
Yeah.
What I love about that particular piece is you're letting the cinema of the event really speak for itself. There's no overview. There's no narration over the top of it. Obviously, a very deliberate choice on your part.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess there's a kind of series of images that like we're playing with there of it kind of comes in the postscript of the film almost of this maritime tradition that we in Australia have been given of kind of like maps and like very exacting measurements of things and how you build a boat, and this very British thing that seems very kind of posh or something. And I feel like the whole film is playing with those aesthetics and kind of trying to co-opt them and mess around with them. And it kind of particularly ties into the imagery around the way that the border is enforced, and the way that I think Indonesian people are often viewed in media in Australia as kind of like not part of the story of the country. So it's that's part of it. And yeah, obviously it's kind of a real the whole boat building thing is a lead into to Mala, and what we're trying to do with the film is have the viewer form an emotional connection rather than just be told these facts about what happens, but have them care about someone who is part of this now. rather.
Perhaps we should talk about Mala. We
Yeah.
will introduce her in a moment, but perhaps we could talk about Mala at this point.
Yeah. Well, Mala's one of the team members of Horst Libner, who I know a bunch of you have had the pleasure of meeting.
Yeah.
He's just an absolute font of knowledge about this whole space. I was probably on my 5th trip to Sulawesi when Horst asked if I could give this young woman a lift into back into Tanaberu, and I was playing around with a new lens, and we just kind of were like just playing with some stuff, and she was buying some things, and she just immediately made sense as a character, and she just has such a kind of fire in her, and she also, in a very practical film sense, she's extremely patient, she's really hardworking, and she just has a lot of really interesting things to say, I think, about being a woman in a very male-dominated space.
And she studied marine biology, I understand.
Studied maritime studies, yeah.
Maritime studies.
With a focus sort of on heritage. But the reason that she got into maritime studies is that her father was kind of in that kind of ecological space and trying to stop illegal fishing. Yeah.
One of the things about Mala is it, of course, brings us very front and center with the concept or the issue around gender. We have, we tend to think of it as a very masculinized industry. And what she's doing is quite confronting and quite challenging. She wants to know what was the role of women, what role, or if any, did they have? And she's really interested in, I think, her own possibilities of traveling by one of these boats. She's a quite remarkable young woman.
She is. And she's ambitious, and she wants to know why women haven't really been part of this process. And so, yes, she's very interested. There's also sort of interventions here because she didn't know much about the Australian connections, but we were explaining to her how what these connections were, and she found that really fascinating.
Yeah.
So she's sort of evolved into just a really big part of the film, and it's largely because she's so compelling, and also because she's able to take a viewer who may not really care that much about the history of this thing. If they're not interested in the film on that level, then they can find an interest perhaps in just what the experience of a young woman in Indonesia is, and particularly a woman who is really quite religious. She's very, throughout, despite all the things that she sees and all the, there's a lot of alcohol consumption, all sorts of behavior that happens at these boat building yards, but she was just very committed to her beliefs. And I feel like that's something that Australian audiences should be seeing. I think that we don't necessarily see those stories about Indonesia very regularly.
No, that's very true. And Will, one of the things that Mala really reminds me of is, unfortunately, very tragically, one of our very dear postdoctoral fellows in this program passed away 2 years ago. And she was a Makassan. She was deeply religious, but she was also a ferocious feminist. And I don't think even I had really quite appreciated that those things could inhabit the same space.
Yes.
That's really what I found with Mala. She reminded me kind of, I'm sure my colleagues might probably have a similar experience, but she reminded me tremendously of our Lily, just the way she interacts with the world, which is both through a deeply religious lens, but also as a committed feminist and really concerned about women's rights and women's capacity to do things.
Absolutely. And yeah, Lily was also super important for this film. She gave me a lot of advice and was able to just shoot down various ideas that we had in this lovely way. Yeah, it's an enormous loss. And
Indeed.
yeah.
Shall we go on to watch the next clip, which includes Mala, and then we can come back to discussing some of the rest.
Oh, sounds good.
Tapi ikan itu satu tidak makan daging. Daging dia makan. Biar buaya makan.
Jadi sekarang kita lagi buat batu biar karena tiangnya sudah diisi naik untuk menyeimbangkan kondisi perahu. Batunya harus diisi sampai batas ini. Kemudian ditutup lagi pakai ini. Terus kita pindah ke depan dan ke depan sampai semua terikat. Agar kapalnya bisa seimbang. Oke.
Ya depannya di mana nih?
Di tengah situ.
Di tengah.
Atau di atas bisa. Terserah. This is my bedroom.
Aku sebelah.
Sleep.
Yang mana?
Hah?
Aku di sebelah.
No, boy, just girl.
Langsung turun malah batunya.
Iya langsung gitu. Shit. Sayang.
Malah bayangkan berapa lama bisa tidur di dalam ini?
Berapa lama?
Dibayang-bayangin.
Bisa sebulan, maybe.
Bisa lebih lama enggak?
Bisa lebih lama dari itu.
Pernah ya ke Singapura itu 3 bulan PP.
Bisa. Saya bisa mengkondisikan diri untuk tidur berapa lama pun di lokasi.
One of the things that I found quite challenging, particularly watching the full film, is the vulnerability of Mala. There are moments where I felt really protective towards her. And that moment there where, I mean, there's a slight sort of tension or maybe even threat. Where will you be sleeping? I'll sleep next to you. And it's almost like like I guess we would call it a form of harassment. But what struck me was that kind of mythology we've got about the Baini and the very romantic notions that somehow at some point a Baini, a Muslim woman, came on one of these trips and she now walks up and down at Yirrkala and many people will tell you, I've not seen her myself. Many people when you go to Yirrkala will tell you that they have seen the Baini and she's all dressed in white. And that's kind of a very romantic vision, but you really challenged it by having Mala have that really quite confronting scene about the sleeping arrangements.
Yeah, I think that that the sort of embodiment of Baini can be taken in lots of ways. It's quite a direct intervention that's there in the film, but and it was something that we had to be really careful about whether it was really appropriate to do that. But I find this a mystery as well, and I find it really interesting I guess the clash between what I'd read about notions of Baini and what people spoke about, which gets back to the ideas that we were talking about of the, the value in amplifying oral histories. But yeah, it just sort of became this beautiful thing, I think, where suddenly we could create a version of Baini for people to view. And when we were discussing it, there was Timmy Jabaranga, who's just a very important part of this, and a traditional owner of the Bawaka homelands, and also Ariane. When I spoke about, like, this is incredible, this connection between Mala's story and Baini's story, do you think that we could make something of this? They were like, yes, of course. Like, there was no hesitation, because that's kind of the way that I think that knowledge in history works. And I think that's another really important thing that we're trying to show audiences, that there isn't like a sort of, this is in the past, this is the present. It's kind of this knowledge that just is in the place. And I know I just have to mention, because I know Abdi's on this call, he's one of the co-producers of the film. He, in the sequence of the film, for everyone who has seen the whole film, when Mala is swimming in the ocean and she's talking about how she sort of needs to do things that she wants, and she's not going to be like weighed down by being a woman. And Abdi was watching a rough cut with me, and he's like, she's Baini. And he picked the twist kind of like a full 15 minutes before it came. And it was, we were just both sitting in this room crying, and it was a whole thing. But I hope that it's just one of many depictions of Baini that come through, because it's just about respecting stories that are so well told up north that I don't really think that we have an exposure to here in the south of Australia.
Yeah. So what's next for the film? I mean, I know you're writing an exegesis for your PhD, but I'm thinking distribution. Are you anticipating it might be something that could go into schools or potentially within education forums?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, we'd love to do that. We've had some really great success with some festivals, but we'd love to have it on a streaming platform that people can access across Australia. And also the next kind of part of this is doing screenings across Indonesia. And I'm sort of struggling with the balance of finishing this project in Australia, but also Mala hasn't had the film screen in Makassar, where her student organization is. And that's something that we're just so motivated to have happen, because I feel like there hasn't been a full closure for her. She's had her life kind of turned upside down, and she's come down to Melbourne screenings here. But then it's kind of like she's back in Baobao now, and we'd love to just have Indonesian audiences seeing this. And I mean, I'd love to hear people who may be on this call who are from Indonesia, who have just had an exposure to that story of Mala, because we really see this as an opportunity of kind of connecting Australia and Indonesia on a different level. So that's kind of the goal. Yeah.
One thing, Will, we could consider, and I think this would actually work really well. Certainly David and I are heading to Makassar this year to work with the Kota Makassar Museum to create a new exhibition. It's primarily historical photographs, but a new exhibition for them on the industry on the engagement between sailors from Makassar and Australia. I guess that they're very under-resourced, I'm sure you're well aware. So it was a great opportunity for us to gift them something that might be able to replace some of the very, very tired exhibits that they've got, even though got a little bit polished in the last couple of years. We've been working closely with Todd Dias, who's the Consul General for Makassar. Todd is very keen to do as much in this space as he can. Perhaps there's a collaboration there that we could undertake, potentially showing that film when, you maybe could come with us and we could show that film. So perhaps that's a conversation that we should keep on having.
No, that's great.
And in addition to this, Global Encounters is having an exhibition, and Abdi and Abi and but I hope a whole lot of other people are on this call who are going to be part of that exhibition. The exhibition starts at Monash University on the 4th, at Monash University's Museum of Art on the 4th of October. It goes through until December, then it heads off to Perth, to the Institute of Contemporary Art there. And one of the things that we're currently talking to the Consul General in Makassar is to potentially take some of that collection, that exhibition, to Makassar next year, which will coincide with the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the consulate in, because it's, as you mentioned, it's a very recent concept. So I think it becomes a decade old next year. And Todd's extremely energetic in this space. So I think there's real possibilities there for us to get that into Indonesia. Obviously, having you come along with us to do so. So
yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah,
we should think about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, look, we're sort of heading up to about 40 minutes, so maybe it's time. If anybody has any questions, you can either make yourself. I can only see a very small smattering of people. I'm not sure why that would be. Perhaps if I do that, everyone must have their oh, there's loads of people here. Anyway, if anybody would like to ask a question or have a comment, please either put your hand up and hopefully I will see you, and if not, pop something into the chat. I know David will be monitoring the chat for us, so we can have a conversation, and hopefully many of you have seen the film. The film, it's quite interesting at the moment. There's something of a kind of renaissance in this particular area in terms of films. We had the before 1770 film, which has come out of the Sydney, and that's been extremely well received and quite popular. And obviously your film, and we've had our own small smatterings of things that the ABC have put together in the process of the work that we've been doing. So I think there's a real interest, and I'd love to see a kind of, maybe a little film festival. Maybe that's too grand, but maybe, somehow putting all those films together on a one-day symposium, which might make for some really interesting viewing.
Absolutely. I feel like if anyone's gonna make that happen, it's like you're the you would be amazing at doing that.
I'll see what I can do.
I'm particularly, I would really encourage anyone who hasn't seen the Compass episode that you were on with the Oduado Bakari images, which are behind you in your background. It's
there they are.
one as well, and I'd love to for everyone to see that, because it's a very different kind of thing. It has sort of reenactment elements, but I thought it was done so beautifully by it was
Erin Park.
Erin Park, that's right.
Yeah, Erin, she just fell in love with the story. She fell in love with the Bakari images, and she funded herself to come to Makassar, and that is actually, that's no small thing. So we were very pleased and privileged to work with her on that. And the Bakari images are going to be examples of them will be donated to the Kota Makassar Museum as part of this collection of, I think we've got about 12 photographs and various things that we're putting together with captions for them. It's a very small room that we've got, but I think it'll be a nice contribution, and it's nice to be able to give back, particularly when we've had such wonderful and generous hosts. All the work we've done there, we've just been incredibly generously hosted. So can I ask if anybody's got any questions or comments?
Should I stop sharing the screen?
Sure.
Oh, wow, you can see everybody.
Okay. Oh, there you are. There we are. I've got something. Okay, I've only got, I've got one, there's something in the chat, so that's good. Oh, David's just popped in the Compass episode, so yeah, please do have a look at it. We were really pleased with it. It was a terrific opportunity to work with, and particularly with the community on Groot Island, the Anindilyakwa. They just lit up the screen. They were quite remarkable. Sylvia was just superb, just spectacular.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. I mean, I'd be really interested in anyone who's seen the film, just in the way that they received Mala as a sort of character, I guess, within this, or what kind of made sense and what didn't make sense. I feel like we've had quite a lot of feedback from the film where people were like, hold on, Mala doesn't get on a boat and sail to Australia. Why haven't you finished this? And Horst has kind of been on the phone saying, we've got to do the second part of this film. We can sail the Anugerah Allahi down to Darwin, it'll be great. Or even people who have seen before 1770 as well. I think that's another really interesting take on this whole space.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's also a small short documentary that was put together by the Makassan city of Makassar. It's a kind of promotional documentary, a little tourism piece, which really focuses on the trade as well. So there are lots of people who are sort of, thinking about this visual representations of the industry. I'm wondering with Mala, it's a tricky thing to, if you were to take Horst's suggestion and put her on a boat and sail her to Darwin, that you're not almost contradicting yourself where you say, I don't want to do reenactments.
Exactly. Yes.
What's the tension there? What's the tension with the reenactment? I mean, I get it, but I want to know what the tension is.
Yeah. Well, I guess the attention is that it's not real, and it's not what Mala really has capable to her. So it's an intervention that we as filmmakers would be making to then, which would be very entertaining. There's a lot of documentaries that put people in more complicated positions and then film the reaction. The whole idea of this film is to sort of just give people a window into this other space and represent the reality, which is that there aren't, it's not possible for these two groups of people to really connect in that way. But it does happen. But yeah, not necessarily the kind of film that I can make really, or have much interest in making. But I think that it's just been beautiful to show, to have Mala come to screenings in Australia, and the reception that she's got from Indonesian audiences here has been really amazing. Yeah.
Now, I believe Campbell's put his hand up, and for some reason I can only see you and I, Will. So Campbell, please unmute yourself and there you are.
Unmute myself. Firstly, congratulations, Will. It is a wonderful film. Something that Lynette has already mentioned.
You've seen the very early iterations of the film as well.
Is the taking the emphasis in some ways away from Yolŋgu, and in your case on to Groote Eylandt, and what I think that's really interesting and successful, and particularly the stuff that's coming on the Yanua will be very interesting, because that's really new. And that leads me to think, what are the future projects and ideas that this whole story can give rise to? What is there new to find out, or new approaches? Because, as it were, it's taken on a life quite apart from the sort of factual history of the trepang industry. It's now gone into all sorts of things, as your film so beautifully explores. I'm not sure that I have any great ideas about this, but it does seem to me an interesting question. How can you take the situation that we now have and develop it in some interesting way, in film or in anything else for that matter?
Lynette, I feel like you can respond to that maybe before I can.
Well, I'm incredibly excited by the ways in which artists are responding to this history, and we're getting some incredible art, performance, dance, song. I've anyone who has seen Abdi Carrier's fabulous work is just riveting, and I just think there's so much that we can learn, but not in a sort of creative sense, rather than just the dry history, which is fantastic and interesting. I love that history. I mean, I'm a historian. I love that stuff. But I think it's a real opportunity for us also to think more broadly in kind of creative and culturally sensitive ways, thinking about these relationships, because ultimately the industry is one thing. And of course, the industry is really important. But what we're really interested in, if we're honest with each other, is the relationships that come out of that industry people's connections. You know, people, I mean, when I'm in Makassar, people refer to their families in Australia, and people often say, well, you know, can you help me find my family, because they've lost connections over time. I also think, I really do believe that there's probably some DNA research that can be done, some very sophisticated DNA researchers. I'm thinking of Ray Tobler at the ANU, who's, I think, highly likely, he's shown some real interest in this is not my area of expertise at all, I might add, but it's definitely something that people are asking for and are interested in. So I think there's sort of all different prongs that we can start to think about in terms of telling this story and how we tell these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was also going to say, excuse me, I think there's something about no, sorry, Lynette, you're going to have to keep going.
Poor Will is nursing a very bad cold, so he's slightly losing his voice. You okay?
All right, yeah, I'm back. I think that there's something also about just going with some of the perspectives and the storytelling that happens up north that may not be like provable in a lot of other ways, but there's what's so exciting about this Makassan story, and Lynette, we've spoken a bit about this, is the agency that's represented there, and the fact that people controlled who came in and what people did when they were there. And I think that's such a big part of this, and it has such a resonance for today, where people are interested in, they've been saying that they want a voice on managing country and sea. So I just think that there's so much more that can be done in that space. And I think there's so many different ways of doing that. Yeah.
One of the things that we've just launched, well, last year we launched a new Centre of Excellence, which is called the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence in Indigenous and Environmental Histories and Futures, which is a rather clunky title, but we call it CIEF. One of the things that CIEF is committed to is looking at the last 1,000 years of people's interactions on their country. Obviously, my interest is in the top end, but the interactions on country over the last 1,000 years and how we might use those to potentially predict or assist people in managing their sea country and their land country over the next 100 years. So we're sort of taking looking back 1,000 years, looking forward 100 years. Obviously, things like climate change and sea level rise, and all these are very important issues. But I do think that a lot of that's actually come out of thinking about this particular industry, and that's really spurred us to start thinking about, well, what can it tell us about how people, you know, lived in the past and how they might live in the future moving forward? Because we have to admit, we've made a bit of a mess of things in the last 200 years. Do I have any other questions or comments? Leonie, thanks.
Yeah, look, I just want to say I absolutely adored the film, Will, and one of the things that really came through strongly was, and you mentioned this in your commentary before, that it seems to be predicated on what the communities want, what it can give back. You know, it's not from a film point of view or an academic point of view, although it is based in those forms, but it is about what the communities want and how work and for us as historians or academics, our research, you know, what benefit it can be for the community. So I found that came through really strongly, and film is a fantastic medium for doing that, because it gets us out of the academic journal paywall, you know, and it makes it available for people. But I also just wanted to say one of the touches that I really loved in it was where you had Edith, I think, watching the boat, the mast being raised on, you know, she was watching the film with her heart in her mouth. You could
Yeah.
tell we were watching it. But also Mala was watching the footage from, I can't remember whether it was Anindilyakwa or
I think she's watching
McCallum.
Yeah.
But it was a really nice way of, you know, I like to see this, especially the history of Australian relations with Makassar, as digging a tunnel from both ends. You know, and that Compass episode really showed that too. You had people in Australia and people in Makassar desperately wanting to reconnect, and I feel your film really, you know, sort of showed that really well, that idea of, you know, you've got this really strong will and to, you know, from both ends to reconnect. And
thank you.
film's a great medium. Yeah.
I think that that's kind of part of the idea that we had of just was kind of mimicking, I guess, those initial discussions that we had with the women in the Groote Eylandt Language Centre, who were, you know, they'd see Bulakumba in South Sulawesi and they'd be like, oh my God, they're in Bulakumba and we're in Umbakumba. Like, what are the, you know, that's crazy. And that they weren't interested in going to Indonesia, but that technique of having people see things and seeing that emotional connection was kind of the main thing that we're trying to get throughout. It's kind of a consistent theme of just showing the emotion and the like effective experience rather than like a big, like, this is what happened, this is the fact. And yeah, we kind of ripped off it's a kind of increasingly common device used in film. So they did it in that great Nemesis ABC series where Malcolm Turnbull is seeing some of the clips of himself and speeches that he'd made in relation to Barnaby Joyce or whatever. He's like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. And I think that it's something that's a really powerful way of making a film when you're interviewing someone, just showing them things to respond to, because it makes it real to them and they're in that moment. And I think that that's something that film can do in the history space that writing can't do. Yeah, so that's kind of the reason for it, isn't it?
We have a comment from Kelly Clayton. I'll read it out for you, Will. Kelly said, I'm so grateful to be able to see and hear more about the Anindilyakwa narrative, about their historical and ongoing interactions with the island's Southeast Asian mariners. Thank you so much. I can see myself rewatching these films. And I should add, Kelly's doing a PhD looking at the various, I'm not going to paraphrase it too much, but she's looking at particularly Anindilyakwa and I guess a few other groups, but looking at the materials that they may have traded as part of what she's describing as an emergence into a global culture.
Oh, wow.
So that's she has a milestone tomorrow, so she's probably feeling very nervous. We're right on 7 o'clock now. I don't know if anybody has anything else they'd like to ask.
I just have a quick thing.
Yes.
So with the exhibition that is happening at Monash University Museum of Art, we've got a I can see Francis from Mama is hey Francis is here in the Zoom. So there is a press release that Mama released late last year, and some of the description on the second page you can see a description of the exhibition that we're doing.
Okay.
Campbell has raised his hand again.
Yes, I've got a Campbell. I hope you're not choking there.
No, I'm not choking. I was just going to say, for your great film festival, don't forget John Darling's Land Below the Winds.
Yes.
Yes, good
We've
point.
just about got the festival.
I think this has got legs, this idea. I think I may work on it. So you'll probably hear more from me. Well, look, I think maybe at this point we should say thank you to Will. We do plan on running our seminar series right through till the end of this year. I can't tell you who's on next month, because unfortunately we haven't quite secured them yet. but no doubt there will be a seminar next month as well. So thank you everybody for joining us, and a huge thank you to Will. Congratulations on a fabulous film, and I look forward to your ongoing and continuing success.
Yeah, thank you so much. And any questions or anything, I'll just put my email address in the chat here. Please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to make the link available for the film we'll keep it up for maybe a day or so further, and then we'll have to take it down because we're in negotiations with streamers right now.
Look, I know a couple of people had sent got the link quite late, so they weren't able to see it, but they may well be able to view it in the next day or so. So that'd be fantastic. Thanks, Will.
And there are a couple of late registrations that I haven't sent the link email to yet, but I'll send it to them right after this, and then it'll be up for tomorrow. Yes.
Okay. Well, lovely to see everybody. I look forward to catching up again with you in a month or so. Thank you so much, Will. Thank you, everybody, and good night.